Hello, my name is Nobulali Tangazele, and this is my very first podcast. This is an episode that I am going to be introducing myself and talking about why it is I decided to do a PhD and my journey throughout the course. So, this is all new to me, and I've been psyching myself up for this podcast for over a year. I wasn't sure what to podcast about because I do quite a lot of different things. I'm an actress by profession, I'm a producer, I've got a degree in dramatic arts, and I've run my own production company for almost 12 years. I consult, I lecture, and I am a PhD graduate from the University of Warwick. Now, when I initially wanted to do the podcast, it was because I felt I would like to have a voice. And not a lot of people get the opportunity to do a PhD because not a lot of people want to do a PhD. And it's a world that I still find fascinating. And whenever I meet someone that wants to do a PhD, I'm always like, okay, so let me give you some tips. The first thing is make sure this, make sure this, make sure that. So I thought, why not record a podcast where I can create a capsule that summarizes some of the lessons that I've learned, but also explore some of the things that I wish I had known when I started my journey, during my journey, and even after my journey. So let me start at the beginning, which is a very good place to start. Why? Why did I do the PhD? So I've never been academically inclined. Surprise! She did a PhD and she was not smart. And the reason for this, or the reason I say that, is because I had to repeat my very first grade at school. One of the reasons stated on my report card, which I still have, was that I was rather immature, cried very easily, and found very simple tasks extremely difficult. They did say that it might be due to partial dyslexia, or it might just be that I am more creatively inclined than I am academic. So as a result, my mom had taken us to an educational psychologist, and I then, you know, my mom signed us up for dance classes, and I started dancing because my mom was advised, Ruti, it might be better for me to follow a career in the arts. Thanks, mom. That really helped because what dancing did is it took away the need to vocalize things and allowed me to do things with my body. And I think finding a voice through my body allowed me to build confidence. And then what mom also did is she got us audiobooks as opposed to just reading books so that I could listen and follow and catch up with my classmates. But also she was very invested in how I went about studying. Now, the journey starts there because when you start your very first grade at school and get told that certain things are not for you, you have this question, Yoguti, but what if they are? What if it's not me? What if it's the system? But also, what if I did do well academically and maybe chose to go as far as I possibly could? But anyway, let that go. And then, oh, Mama, after making us join dance, she also changed the school that I repeated the grade. It was a very small class, which was good because Miss Siegel, who was my first grade teacher, paid a lot of attention to me. In the second year, I was able to catch up, but also I built my confidence. So I am grateful that I had to repeat the year because in that repetition, I got to learn certain things and also hone in on some of the skills that she felt I was lacking. Fast forward to grade two, I'm now in a different school, Winchester Ridge Primary School, which is in the south. Shout out to Winchester Ridge Primary School alum. And I got there and I started to flourish academically. And I think that slow paced, make a repeat allowed me to gain confidence, but also allowed for me to get into the second grade being a lot more prepared. And Mama was extremely invested in helping with our homework. I say our because I'm one of three children. I've got an older brother and a younger sister. Yeah, so Mama was very invested in our education, would help with our homework, and would ask questions about what was happening at school. So I think I then gained confidence and then academically also improved. But I did a lot of extracurricular activities, which made school be something that was fun because I wasn't looking forward just to the studies, but also what would happen after school. Then fast forward to about primary school. It's December holidays, and I'm having a conversation with my mom whilst visiting Ugokwami Ejamini, Esoweto. And my grandmother, had been poorly in health. And I used to enjoy going there for school holidays, and she raised me for part of my life. And I'd always be extremely detailed about how I assist her, knowing how many medication, how many pills she needs to take, and things like that. And I was having a conversation with my mom and just asked Ruti, what does she think I should be when I grow up? And like a lot of parents, she was like, I think you should be a doctor. And then that landed in my head. And even my grandmother reinforced that and said, "Nobulali unesineke," which is you really have this patience and care for others. And I think, being a doctor would be something that would suit you. So I then became extremely motivated by what my mother and my grandmother had said. And I thought, okay, then I want to be a doctor, a medical doctor. Fast forward to grade 11, I'm sitting in my English class, and my English teacher, Mrs. Brown, comes up to me and suggests that I audition for the role of Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. I had been in the school plays before, I had done all sorts of things, but I had never been like a lead role. And I auditioned not necessarily expecting much. I got the role, I got to perform at the Raps Festival at Wits University and won the Best Cameo Award for my role as Puck. And there was something magical that happened on stage that night when I performed, as well as when I received the award. I felt like I was at home. I had always been dancing, and my first performance on the Wits Theatre stage was at the age of 7 through moving into dance. But there was something about speaking on stage and having a character and having such a big audience watch me that just made me feel like this is where I belong. And something that the adjudicator said was, if I did not pursue a career in the arts, it would be a loss to the arts industry. So I thought, okay, this is it. Let me study drama. Went home and told my mom after some contemplation that I want to actually pursue a degree in dramatic arts. And her response was very caring and kind and considerate. And Mama said, Wuti, you know, I'd be happy even if you decided to be a newspaper agent. If you want to sell newspapers, that's fine by me. I don't care what it is that you do. What is important to me is that you're the best at it and that you apply yourself. So practice a spirit of excellence in whatever it is that you do. And that being said, if you do choose to do a degree in drama, still promise me that you'll be a doctor in dramatic arts. So I want you to go to the highest level of education when it comes to whatever it is that you're going to study. So I was like, that's fair enough. I get the PhD. I mean, I get the drama degree. She gets the PhD. So that I think set my heart on a path towards a PhD. And immediately after finishing my undergraduate degree, I did my master's degree through the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship. And then after doing my MA, my mom asked if I wanted to do the PhD immediately. And there was something in me that was like, I do want to do a PhD, but I don't think I'm ready. I mean, I must have been like 21, 22. And I also felt like if I do a PhD, I don't think I want to do it in dramatic arts. I didn't know what I wanted to do it in then. So that's the one reason why I wanted to do my PhD. And it's the first P for the promise that I made to my mother. Then, fast forward some years, I'm running my own production company, enjoying it quite a lot. Doing very well within the industry. And unfortunately, my mom passes away rather unexpectedly at the tender age of 49 years and 51 weeks. She passed away 7 days before her 50th birthday, which was devastating to say the least. But it is what it is. So I remember just looking at her grave and thinking, okay, now I've made a promise to this lady and now she's passed away. Can't break a promise because she'll do things in the heavens there to remind me, hey, Ungolata a PhD. So after mom passed away, went into an undiagnosed depression and just felt like there's no purpose, like the one person that I really loved and appreciated in my life is gone, and I don't know what to do. So after some contemplation, I thought maybe now is the time to do a PhD so that I can take some time out, allow myself to grieve, but also upskill myself because whilst the business was doing exceptionally well, I wasn't 100% sure what it was that was, leading us in this direction. And I spoke to a mentor of mine about, pursuing a PhD, and I asked, what are the topics that you would recommend a person do a PhD in if they were to pursue a PhD that was business focused? And the person said, you can't go wrong with strategy and finance. And I was like, finance, maybe not so much, but strategy, certainly. And I started looking around for where I wanted to do my PhD. And at that time in 2012, I was working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. So I came to the United Kingdom for a conference, and I met Jonathan Nealons, who was a guest lecturer at the conference or speaker at the conference. I was speaking on a panel with him, had a conversation with him, and then attended a workshop. And he said, you know what, if you're really interested in doing this whole PhD thing, come and see me next week, Tuesday, and let's chat about it. My flight was supposed to leave back for South Africa on Sunday. I extended it, went on the Tuesday, and I was like, you really came? And I was like, yeah, you said I should, and I am, yeah. So he basically said, okay, this is how you go about applying for the PhD, and I'll speak about that on another episode. I spent my Christmas holidays in 2012 basically writing my proposal, sent it in January 2013 on the 1st of January, and then got news that, what, I had been considered for the master's program, I mean, for the PhD program. And now it's just a question of, am I going to get funded or not? And then I found out that I am going to get funding. Unfortunately, my dear aunt passed away in 2013, and grief took over again. So I decided, you know what, let me postpone me doing the PhD just to allow the emotions to settle. And then I started then preparing to do the PhD in 2014, which is when I decided to then do the PhD. So in that is the second reason for why I wanted to do the PhD. It was purpose. I was being purposeful about one, changing my career trajectory. I'd been working in the arts and I wanted to grow my business, but I also wanted to grow my business acumen and to further develop my skills so that I could potentially work both in the arts but potentially in academia or even as a consultant. So I did then do my PhD, and I did it at the University of Warwick. And I'll talk in another episode about how that was and why I chose that university and also the specific program that I did. But it's really important that for me, the purpose for which I did the PhD was very, very clear. And one, it was to reinforce the promise that I made, but two, it was to find a niche area that would enable me to change careers, develop my business, and also have a spot in a business school should I complete it. Then I also decided that I really want to do a PhD for the last P, which is prosperity. There is something that shifts when you go from being Miss, Mrs., or just whatever your personal pronouns are to being Dr. Damazele. You are able to enter rooms that you weren't before. People give you a certain level of credibility just because of the fact that you've actually gone through this journey and come out at the end successful. It shows that you've got resilience, tenacity, hard work, or the chutzpah, or the intelligence, or the commitment to see something through. So there was also that aspect, Yoguti, from a prosperity perspective, I would actually be changing the legacy of not just myself, but also intergenerationally. And this was really important to me because my grandmother used to live in KZN, and she decided to migrate from KZN to Johannesburg. One, because my uncle was ill at the time, but secondly, because she wanted economic prosperity. Then my mom pursued a degree in business administration, started her own business with my father. At a very young age, they became millionaires, and unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, they lost a lot of their money and the business shut down. And I could see that Umama wanted to reach that peak again, but it didn't happen. So I thought to myself, perhaps where the baton was dropped in that generation, this generation can pick it up. So entrepreneurship was one of the ways that I could go about doing it. But a second way was me exploring how education can actually take you to the greatest height and enable you to access industries, access conversations, access leaders, but also just access a level of success that enables you to earn a lot better than what you do without a degree, for example. If you are not necessarily inclined in that way, but also allowed you to pursue a way of exploring, the development of knowledge in a very theoretical manner, as well as the practical application of that. So I was also very deliberate about what it is that I did my PhD in. Following on my mentor's advice, I did do my PhD in strategy, but my case study was actually an entity in South Africa, which was a financial institution in South Africa. But I also wanted my PhD to be practical and applicable to what I did it in. So I looked at strategy as practice, which is a micro aspect of strategizing that says, what do people do when they actually strategize on a day to day basis? How do they do it and why do they do it? So that was my journey into my why for doing the PhD. And if you're listening to this and thinking about doing a PhD, or are currently doing a PhD, or looking to encourage others to do a PhD, I suppose the invitation that this episode of the podcast makes is to ask yourself, what are your reasons for actually doing the PhD? And these change sometime. When you start the PhD, you might have a very clear reason as to why you want to do the PhD. But as the PhD evolves, you realize actually, I want to do it more because of X versus Y. And yes, I might have wanted to initially go into academia, but now I want to go into the consulting space because doing a PhD actually opens you up to so many opportunities outside of going the academic route. I am a hybrid of both an academic as well as a practitioner. I consult and I lecture. And when I did the PhD, to be honest, I didn't think that I'd end up in academia, primarily because I'm such a hands on, practice based individual, having trained in dramatic arts. But I must say that, the lecturing aspect of it has been extremely exciting. But I think it's also because of the school that I chose to lecture at, as well as the topics that I choose to lecture in. So I am now an individual that has graduated with a PhD. I lecture at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, and then I also do some consulting work on the side, and I still run the production company. So this essentially is why I chose to do the PhD. It's also my very first episode of the podcast. I was probably going to listen to this time and time and time and time again, figure out what it is that works and what doesn't. But this is it. The reason why I have chosen to wear the outfit that I'm wearing, and for those of you listening, I'm wearing a Sishweshwe blue dress that is very inspired with prints of elephants on it. And it was one of the dresses that my mom made me. But it was also one of the first outfits that I wore when I arrived at Warwick. So whenever I want to pay homage to my mom, or whenever I want to remember what it is that actually led me down this path of purpose, I remind myself by adorning something that she made so that I know that even though she's not here in the physical, she definitely is here in the spiritual, because these are actually garments that she had touched herself and made with great purpose for me. And similar to how she took what was cloth and turned it into an outfit, I took an idea and turned it into a thesis as well as a business. So, thank you very much for listening up to this point of the podcast. I am very excited that I have actually felt the fear and did it anyway. Um, I hope that you will join me for the episodes that are to come. And how I've decided to structure the episodes is that I will be looking at the 5 W's and the age of doing a PhD. So that is, why do you want to do the PhD? Where would you like to do the PhD? When would you like to do the PhD? Who would you like to work with whilst doing the PhD? And who do you think you'll become during this journey? When, where, what, why, the how of doing the PhD. So, how do you actually intend to go about doing this? And this will look at like methods and the likes. And then, lastly, the what. What do you want to consider when doing the PhD? Because there are so many avenues that one can take, and I chose the path less traveled on so many different levels. And sometimes I think that I could have done things a little easier than I did, but I'm glad I did it anyway because now these are skill sets that I will never ever forfeit because they are with me. Thank you very much for listening to my very first episode of the podcast. I was supposed to record this yesterday. I was supposed to start this a year ago. I was supposed to start this a little earlier than now. So now I'm like, the lighting is not exactly how I wanted. The background is not exactly how I wanted. Maybe I should have used a different microphone. But I think this is a big lesson in doing the PhD that you need to let go of the perfection. The perfectionist in me actually led to me delaying me completing my PhD quite a lot. And now I try to strive for progress rather than perfection. I'm a recovering perfectionist, as a friend of mine, Dr. Atambile Masola, would say. And even though this is not perfect, at least I woke up, I planned, I executed, and I did it. So it's always better to be done than for it to be perfect. So, welcome to my podcast. Haven't fully decided what I'm going to call it, but yeah, thank you for listening. And I am PhD.